New Zealanders have always had a love affair with drugs. This is the scale on which we're dealing with.
Is this type of thing coming in all the time? You're seizing these all the time?
Every day.
Seizing a kilo of meth is now considered small fry.
Now we're talking tonnes.
And there's no evidence that it's abating?
No.
A booming trade, an emboldened underworld.
I don't think our society is prepared for the likely effects of what's coming.
And what is coming?
I think drugs are just going to become more prevalent. The social harms, the infiltration of people and systems through corruption is just going to get worse.
This report, obtained exclusively by the Herald, details the new and emerging threats at the New Zealand border. So we've come to the Air Cargo Inspections facility to understand how organised crime groups are adapting and targeting New Zealand and what we can expect in the future. G'day Bruce, nice to see you, how are you? Bruce Berry's worked at Customs for 40 years and is the manager of intelligence.
This is the main inspection area, Bruce?
Yeah, the main inspection warehouse. While the demand is there, the organised crime groups will exploit that, and the money to be made is huge.
The Customs Intelligence Report states our maritime domain is repeatedly exploited by drug traffickers. Some criminals are one step ahead of law enforcement with technology like encryption and tracking devices. And organised crime groups using trusted insiders pose an increasing threat.
You're aware that your staff will be targeted for recruitment?
I think we'd be naive to say that we aren't. The same as any government agency. Organised crime is looking for any in to be able to provide information or advantage.
How do you counter that?
Again, it's education. It's about identifying when an approach is being made. It's about identifying an escalation point.
Innocuous and ordinary people are targets, according to the report.
The report talks about clean skins. What is that?
Clean skin is someone who doesn't have a criminal conviction.
The drug scene in New Zealand has become increasingly competitive. Mexican cartels and Asian organised crime groups are the top dogs when it comes to drug imports. Local gangs like the Comancheros and Banditos have well-established links to overseas crime networks. Some are setting up chapters in the Pacific, and 501 deportees with gang links arriving here from Australia have almost certainly increased trafficking knowledge and leadership. On the other side of the world, at Europe's biggest port in Rotterdam in the Netherlands, customs officials face frequent threats from traffickers. The Netherlands has been locked in a bloody struggle against a murderous trafficking ring. Journalists and lawyers have been assassinated. Bruce Berry worries about escalating violence here.
What we've seen overseas, we're going to see here. Let's make no bones about it.
And you're talking about targeted assassinations. You think that will occur in New Zealand?
I think targeted gang hits are a thing of now. Our international customs administrations have seen customs officers targeted and warned off through intimidation.
Then you think that could happen in New Zealand?
I think it's inevitable.
Is New Zealand prepared for that next level of violence?
I don't think so. I think most law enforcement professionals you will talk to, it is our biggest fear.
Inter-gang violence is at levels we've probably never seen before. The number of drive-by shootings we see now, they're almost a daily occurrence, and certainly several a week. The overseas links are so strong now, and the activities of these gangs are acting much more like the organised crime that we see from overseas.
Chris Cahill is the president of the Police Association and formerly worked for years as a detective targeting organised crime.
Our officers now, when they're stopping a gang car, for instance, they'll take it for granted that they think there'll be a firearm in that vehicle and treat it accordingly.
He says the arrival of 501s with gang links have increased efforts to turn police into insiders, although he says largely this has not been successful.
One of their first things when they set up in New Zealand was to look to see if the police were able to be opened up for corruption, and several approaches were made.
Cahill agrees with Berry's assessment. organised crime groups are increasingly sophisticated and New Zealand isn't yet prepared to deal with it.
I think we're limited in their preparation, and it really depends how it comes and how quickly it comes. I think we have to be really cognizant of the fact that what happens overseas eventually happens in New Zealand.
Methamphetamine makes up more than 38% of seized drugs at the New Zealand border. Cocaine seizures are also increasing.
In just the first 5 months of this year, New Zealand border officials seized 2.5 tonnes of illegal drugs, and that's on top of another 1.6 tonnes which was stopped by overseas border agencies before they landed here in New Zealand.
It's money. It's all about the money.
A tide of drugs washing into the country as the men and women tasked with stopping it hunt through an ever-increasing volume of goods coming across the border.